is. If it's great, fantastic. If it's difficult, fantastic.
All right. So excited about the fires we have just stoked, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Coach. My name is Stefan Ravalli, a host here at Wellness Coach, and I am joined today by Suzanne, Jewell, and we are going to talk about how to fail mindfully and pivot positively. Hello, Suzanne. How are you today?
Hello there. Just awesome to see you today, Stefan. And this is literally not only one of my favorite practices as the mindful entrepreneur, but it is literally how I'm living my life right now. So I'm having to walk my own talk.
Yes, Suzanne is the picture of pivoting, the picture of adaptation to unforeseen circumstances and uncertain possible outcomes. So, and she's doing it so gracefully and showing up to our appointments every time they're made, regardless of how how what's the word unhinged and untethered her refugee status is. She currently doesn't have a home.
Yep.
Well, has a home, currently can't be in it. So excited about the lessons you're going to bring to us today, Suzanne.
Well, so I am going to invite us to take a moment to practice together because that's the real reason we're here. And for those of you who sit with me regularly, I'm going to invite you to take a dignified seat. Make sure that you are with your feet calmly and connected to the earth beneath you. Have yourself seated nice and centered on your chair. And note that you're going to drop your shoulders back a little bit, bring the front of the rib cage a little bit high where the heart is so that you open up the lungs, and take a dignified seat. And if you feel so called, you can shutter your eyes closed now. And we're going to drop in and leave behind the busyness and the business of this day. We're going to take a moment to make a regular visit to ourselves. And in this moment, we're going to tap into the quality of our bodily experience right now. Start first by taking note of your breath. Where in your body is the breath dropping into? Are you breathing through your nose? Is it going down the throat and deep into the lungs all the way to the belly? Or maybe are you breathing in a shallow way because you ran to jump in front of the screen? Just take note, don't try to change it. Be with what is here. Simply engage your curiosity. And as the busyness and the business of the day starts to settle, as your body starts to settle, the practice we're going to engage in today is called being with what is. And I'm going to invite you in your mind's eye to bring something to mind that might be challenging. Maybe it's an overly long to-do list. See that in your mind's eye. Maybe it's a really messy desk. Take note of all the paper and the pens and the old bottles of water that are there. Maybe it's a really cluttered closet you have not yet uncluttered. But as you bring that awareness into your mind's eye, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least challenging, 5 being the most, identify how much this makes you uncomfortable. As you are in this experience, now I'm going to invite you to take note where your discomfort resides. Maybe you feel it as a tightness in your neck. Maybe you feel your jaw getting a little bit more tense. Again, just get curious. We're going to attend and befriend what is actually here in the present moment. The messiness of life. The undone, unfinished to-do list. And as you take a moment to be quiet, I'm going to invite you in this opportunity to now remember a certain time where you actually got very focused and where you went from your desk being extremely cluttered to now being very clean. All of your paper is put away. All of the extra cords and things you use to charge your apparatus are now neatly stacked into the receptacles they belong in. Maybe you envision that closet that needs uncluttering where everything is lined up by color. The blues are all together. The pants are hanging together nicely. Simply in this experience, bring order and ease by imagining it different than what it is. And in this moment, check back in with that scale of 1 to 5. 1 being the least challenging, 5 being very challenging. And try to see if you can note in your own experience a reduction in what it is that you relate to about the mess in your life. By turning toward it, can you attend it? Can you befriend it? Can you offer a higher thought that it will change, but that in this moment it is what it is, and that's okay? Can you be here now with what is present? Now I'm going to invite you simply to bring another experience into your mind's eye. And this experience is something that you have recently actually had a very unexpected failure with. Maybe it was a pitch at the office. Maybe it was a test you went to pass. Maybe you were bidding against someone to buy a home and someone else got it, and that in and of itself feels like a failure. Bringing kind attention, befriending your experience, try to see if you can sit with this experience. Note the level of discomfort in your body. 1 being the least challenging, 5 being the most. Now I want you to think of someone else in your life experience, or someone you've seen on the news, or someone who is in your work environment who also has experienced a challenge. Just like me, they too have failed at something. Maybe it's someone who inspires you. Maybe it's Elon Musk, maybe it's Steve Jobs, maybe it's Maria Shriver, maybe it's Oprah. Each one of them have failed greatly. Knowing that others have also experienced difficulty, does your level of challenge reduce at all? Knowing you are not alone. Knowing that this is the way of human endeavoring. Knowing that to succeed, we must fail often. Letting go all of these images and all of these awarenesses, I invite you to now put your hand on your heart and quietly say to yourself, this too is part of my human experience. This too others have experienced. And in closing, I'm going to read a poem that Nelson Mandela had engraved into the wall of the cell he lived in for 27 years on Robben's Island, called Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And now simply take a moment to come back into the room and flutter your eyes open and welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne. What a deep journey of a practice that was. There's all kinds of stuff I was going to want to talk about today, but that covered a lot just within that.
And we went all the way to South Africa in the meantime, right?
Yeah, wow. That was like a Nat Geo journey along with a meditation experience. Thank you for that. And welcome to those of you just joining us. Hello to Wendy, Kruti, Carlos, and the Buddhist Sangha of Bucks County. And look forward to all of your involvement today. Good to have you guys back. And just a reminder to use the interactive features of today's discussion. Only available on the app. You got to go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store to get the app if you're just watching us on YouTube. I definitely recommend doing that and tapping into Suzanne's incredible expertise at failing, I guess. Well, I don't want to say you're an expert at failing. You're also an expert at succeeding, but along the way, you had to develop a certain tolerance and readiness for failure. Do you want to talk a bit about that journey and what you've learned and gathered from that?
I absolutely do, and I really think that that failure gets a bad rap. Our class today is called Fail Mindfully and Pivot Positively for a reason. Not only do we as humans run from the pain associated with failure, we always want to, because it feels good, run toward the success and the pleasure associated with success. But I really believe that failure offers us these gems and these jewels that if we look at our experiences, whether it's doing a startup or starting a new project or maybe walking away from a relationship, if we embrace it as part of life, if we embrace it in that way, then one of the things that we are able to do, I understand I might be freezing. I apologize. Hello, I'm still here. Let's see. Am I back? Awesome. Thank you for letting me know that. My apologies. It's a rainy Miami day, and that can also happen to our technology. So as long as you're able to see me, I'm noting that you can. Talking about the idea of the failure, are we still live, Stefan?
Yeah, I lost connection somehow. But I'm back now. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
I can, and I'm back too. So there we go. How do we embrace that we just had a hiccup in the middle of a class? Really learning to look at it and simply say, what's in this for me to learn? And I think that when you take the aspect of curiosity as one of the tenets of mindfulness, how to pay attention on purpose in the moment non-judgmentally, and that last one of curiosity, and if you cloak things in curiosity, you get the ability to actually see the juice in the places where we do have breakage. There's this gorgeous practice by the Japanese that when you have a piece of pottery that is broken, kintsugi, you actually put it back together again with polished pieces of threads of gold, and it becomes what is literally called golden joinery. And the idea is that wherever we are broken is where we are made stronger. So I really think that when we shift our mindset about how we embrace failure and we data mine it for the good that it offers us, even though it may be difficult to sit with it, that's why we sat with the messy desk or the very cluttered closet. If we can be with the discomfort long enough, we can actually find our way through and see clearly what the experience for the lesson that is there.
Yeah, and it's being an entrepreneur, there is a certain amount of results that we need. There's a certain amount of, you know, I guess we can say outcome orientation we have. Like things got to be at this certain level of excellence. And that can lead to an intolerance for anything but that. And so there's this certain, I guess, a broadening of our perspective required that to get excellence along the way, there's just going to be simply a process of not so sexy clumsiness that gets in the way. But that's also what makes us great. And what practices do you use for this, for this process to dial us in. I mean, I know we just did a very extensive one, but in the moment we're suffering. We just blew it at a pitch. We amazingly, I just put in an offer on a home. Well, we were about to. We just got approved for lending of the dream home, like
Yeah.
my wife and I's absolute dream home.
Yeah.
8 hours after getting approved for lending, they accepted an offer from someone else. So,
Oh,
so in the moment, you're like, oh God, what do I do? And so what do you do in this moment of like it just happened, failure?
I think there's such a propensity for us not to feel pain that our first thing to do is to run away from it, run and numb. And that numb might come in the form of a bag of potato chips, a bottle of wine, an Amazon shopping spree, or all sorts of other things. It's an interesting thing to realize that when we sit with it and do what we were doing in that practice, we offer it kind attention and we attend and befriend. Okay, so this is disappointment. Oh, so this is what disappointment feels like. Wow, I was really attached to this. This is something I really wanted. And all of a sudden, if you can look at it openly, you can kind of realize, man, I projected that that's where our first kids were going to be born and we were going to have the perfect garden. And all of a sudden, you realize that you built up a whole story around something you'd attached to something that's actually not even occurred, which is the house didn't become yours. So, how do we stand in that and actually offer ourselves just some tenderness, some allowance of this too is part of the human experience? There's going to be gain and loss, there's going to be pleasure and pain, there's going to be all of these varieties of experiences. And if you only want the column that is gain and pleasure and joy, I hate to say it, but I'm going to have to give you back a refund on being human, because it actually does include gain and loss and pleasure and pain and fame and ill repute. It's the joys and the sorrows. It's this experience. And I also think it's interesting for us to note that when we fall in love, for example, we get that heightened sensation of food. The rainbow looks more perfect. The sky looks more blue. If you're able to cultivate when you are either in sorrow or disappointment, you actually have a heightened sense of feelings as well. It just happens to be the other side of the coin. It's still the same coin.
Yeah, and I think there's a big identity factor here, like how much we get wrapped up in a certain identity we build up for ourselves. Like when I came out of India as a meditation teacher, absolutely my intentions were to just help people, be of service, but also like my own identity in that was also coming up too. And a lot of it is built around just the good. Like here's all the stuff that's going to happen that's just the good. Like people are never going to like question or doubt me again, because now I'm a meditation teacher and they're going to think that I'm like totally awakened. And all of my human interactions are going to be inspiring ones now. None of my flaws are going to come into the mix and pollute this. And all of this like identity. And then I get dealt with, I confront harder realities of actually the difficulties of being a human meditation teacher, interacting with other humans, there being potential mismatches. And then all of a sudden, this idea of who I am as an entrepreneur, as meditation teacher gets shaken up. And there's constant, the little failures, they're not just failures, they're challenging my very sense of myself.
Mhm.
Like, and so being fine with failure, I think for me was also being fine with my image of myself getting shaken up. So
That aspect of like, here's the news flash, everything changes. It's like we want security and safety, and so failure somehow seems like that makes us um, unstable or unworthy. A lot of things that you talked about, either identity issues or worthiness issues. And yet, if you look at the beauty of nature, nature is this gorgeous process of constant iteration. What was going on the day that nature created the platypus? I can't tell you, but it's a mammal that actually lays eggs and has a beak like a duck. But it is figured out through evolution how to take its place on the planet as a living being. So we are literally, by the process of failure, not unlike Michelangelo chipping away at the David that was in the block of marble. He saw it, but he had to chip away a whole bunch of what was on the outside that was not needed. At least in my experience and a lot of the wisdom teachings, failure helps us shed what it is that no longer serves us. And that might be an identity, it might be a perspective. I'll quote what some people always love quoting on Facebook and memes, Leonard Cohen's quote about letting yourself crack open because it's where the light gets in.
That's a beautiful quote from a fellow Canadian. So glad you brought in Leonard Cohen for sure. The By the way, guys, let us know what you're thinking about failure. What are you struggling with, and what's knocking you around, challenging your sense of self, failure wise? Let us know in the chat box and the Q&A box. Anything that comes up. We're at the 20-minute mark, but we'll take a few more minutes to get some final questions in. And yeah, we look at other people's failures, and that's just, oh, like Elon Musk's rockets, blow up. And we're like, yeah, but he's, that's just part of his process. He's like, that's part of his story. And, we look at Elon Musk and we'll still say his failures are fine because he's already like killing it. But
Right.
my failures are not fine. My failures are a sign of my deficiency. And so why are we so quick to look at ourselves as deficient if there's a failure, where everyone else's failures are like, yeah, but they've got it figured out. That's their process. They got it nailed. Other people got it figured out. We don't. We don't have it together.
So such an interesting thing happens to us when we do that. First of all, we create an unreal other, which is we literally create an unreal other that they've somehow got something I don't. They've got some secret sauce that I was not given when I came into this incarnation as a human being. What is also really interesting that we as humans do over time is there's a portion of our life cycle where we embrace failure with love. And that cycle happens to be the first time you learn how to walk. What do we do to the little baby when we are the grandma or the mom or the dad or the sister or the aunt across a room, and the little baby's wobbling its way over and it's trying to find how to put upright vertical weight on a foot, and it is constantly falling down? The response in that scenario is always love. The response is always encouragement. There is rarely someone who, when a baby falls as they're trying to learn how to walk, that says, oh, you fool, you didn't figure it out the first time. You'll never get this right. Fascinatingly enough, there's a time in the life cycle of the human expression we stop responding to failure with love. When is that? We still even learn on a bicycle. More often than not, we've got a parent or a brother or a neighbor, somebody who helps us take the training wheels off. What do when they help us take the training wheels off? They allow us to fall. The word fall has only one vowel different from the word fail. We fall, we scrape our knees, we get back up again. If you fall back down, we get back up again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. In the practice itself, even of coming back to the breath, coming back to whatever is your anchor, the whole point about this experience of being human is we're meant to fail and we're meant to try again.
And for those of us that are, I guess you can say, afraid of being fine with failure, I think sometimes, and I might be one of these people, it's like you start like saying okay to failure, then you start not wanting success, as though like failure is now the thing you're seeking, and then your work becomes sloppy.
Yeah.
And then you're rushing and recklessly putting stuff out there because, oh, you just so crave those lessons. So I guess you can say, have you ever seen any cases where people get like really sloppy from failure? Or and if so, if that can possibly happen at all, what would you recommend as a strategy for still remaining, I guess, committed to quality of work and self-discipline and all of that stuff that's also important for entrepreneurship?
So I can so relate to what you just outlined, because first of all, I have to confess I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I also am a Virgo. And perfectionism is actually the root of anxiety. So if any of you out there suffer from perfectionism, take a check on how anxious you are. I actually learned from a mentor of mine in the startup space, and it was such a bold thing for me, but it became a mantra. And it is exactly to the tune of what you talked about. It was called Done is Better Than Perfect. And oh my gosh, did that charge every part of me, because I was used to doing it right, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, didn't send out anything in the media or marketing or visuals that wasn't exactly perfect and that the copy wasn't highly polished. Otherwise, I would just plain not do it. So there's a really interesting thing when perfectionism skews so hard toward overdoing. And then there's a balance question here that is very tied to what you've talked about, Stefan, which is the balance of, let me not take the pendulum of perfectionism and swing that pendulum all the way to let me become masterful at failing. Let me instead try to walk what is the middle way. Let me try to look at both sides of it, cull it for what it's worth. Let me data mine whatever might be deemed as a failure. And I think, again, the really most important thing as a mindful practitioner is, that's what the world may determine or call failure. How am I going to relate to what that looks like? Rather than take it personally, how am I going to relate to it, and what is it here to teach me? And if we hold that kind of observational curiosity around challenge, it doesn't smack us quite so hard right upside the head, like a log, coming from somewhere, and boom, we're knocked out. Because interestingly enough, most of human experience and expression and most of the human journey is about falling down and getting back up again. The first thing we do when we start to walk and find our independence.
Absolutely. And I can also attest too that letting go of perfectionism, as I actually have certain perfectionist tendencies towards certain kind of work, also allowed me to put out work that was like, in a way, like more relatable for people and more
Uh-huh.
valuable to them. Like, oh, I spent 12 hours on a 500-word article because I'm an artist, I'm so committed to perfect prose. And then I make this thing that's just like unwieldy and icy and too intensely crafted. you know, Put out something that I just feel that just feels good and is plainly spoken, and like an hour spent on that rather than 8, sharpening it to my utterly over the top standards on writing. And it happens to be the thing people love most. And this can be annoying to perfectionists because it's like, this isn't my best work.
Right, right,
But in fact,
right.
it's the most valuable work. And this is a whole other topic, and I guess we're out of time, but I just wanted to put that out there in terms of perfectionism actually also holding back even quality of work, at least in
Mhm.
terms of its value to others,
Yep, yep. And I also saw a note just now that popped through that said a quickie comment about failure can fuel self-doubt. And yes, it can. And then there's that beautiful thing of part of that small practice of, how many other humans on the planet also have failed? Everyone, everyone. So none of us are alone. And so I do think that that idea of, just like me, there are many who have stumbled, others who have fallen. We all skin our knees. And when we are helping someone else learn how to ride the bike and take off the training wheels, or if we are doing that for ourselves, are we willing to actually be like that kind person who helped us get back up when we took off the training wheels? Can we be that own nourishment to ourselves when we skin our knees?
Absolutely. Wow, what a great and kind of relieving air letting out discussion today around failure, and so many good strategies for that. So I thank you, Suzanne. And
You're
I thank
welcome.
you, everyone, for joining us and your wonderful contributions. And I will now pass things over to you to end a perfectly, actually glitchy discussion. It's the first time my internet connections really failed me. And I've had to kind of jump back into things and be like, hi, I'm back. And pivot from that. So wow, couldn't be more perfect. Thank you, universe, for giving me some more colors to paint this topic with. So
Beautiful. So let's just take a dignified seat, drop those shoulders back, bring up the heart a little bit, get some air into the lungs. And if you feel so inclined and it's available to you, just gently shutter your eyes closed for a moment. And do put your hand on your heart right away and say to yourself, wow, just like me, others too have failed in whatever they are trying to excel at. This too is part of my human experience. And just like others, I too can try and try again. I can pivot positively. I can begin again with this breath in this moment, right here and right now. And as you come back into the room and open your eyes, I just invite you to live, work, create, and play today in a most mindful way.